Welcome to the Stressless Eating Podcast, where we help diet-obsessed and food-crazed women break themselves out of the food and body prison, end the dieting madness, and take control of their health for good. I'm your host, Leanne Ellington, and this podcast is about answering one question. How can you heal your relationship with food and your body and take a practical approach to this whole self-love journey, but without all that restriction, obsession, and shame, and without needing years of therapy just to do so? If you want to know the answer, you're in the right place. All this information is 100% free, so please subscribe to and review our podcast. All right. Hello. We are live, and I'm so excited to present to you just a really special episode of our podcast. There's actually going to be a series of these. It's live for the Stressless Eating Podcast, where we are taking you through this virtual book club of the Stressless Eating Book, and we're going to be walking you through chapter by chapter. If you haven't gotten your book yet, I'm being crazy, and I'm just giving it away for the rest of the year. So if you want to go to StresslessEatingBook.com, you can get a free copy of it. And then you can go to StresslessEatingScore.com and access the free scorecard, where we walk you through, again, there's 8 power mindsets that go with the 8 chapters that we're going to be walking through in the book for this virtual book club. And then you can, get your score and follow along and just hopefully learn and create new awareness and really, make this different this year. So I know this time of year is notorious for messages starting to come through where it's that whole new year, new you, and, goal setting and New Year's resolutions. And the reality is, and by the way, everything we're talking about in this virtual book club is relevant all throughout the year. It doesn't have to be just this holiday season, but we are recording this right now in December. And it's notorious this time of year for being that time where it's like, hey, let's, get on another diet, get on the next short-term Band-Aid bandwagon. And the reality is, and I mean all of this with love, is that if that didn't work for you in years past and you end up committing to something for the sake of committing to something, or because you're kind of so sick of how you feel from overindulging in the holidays and you commit to something, whether it's a diet or an exercise plan, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. But if you don't address the mindset and the beliefs, and the reality is that if the strategy that you're choosing never worked before, if all of those things are present, or some of those things are present, there's a good chance that history is going to repeat itself and that it's not going to really change. And so part of why I'm giving away the book for free and doing this book club is because I really want this to be different for you this year. And again, not just this year, but all the time. This information is relevant all the time. And I really want things to be different for you so that you can have the last diet that you went on be the last diet that you ever go on, and really create a whole new way of thinking. And so if you have this in, out, on, off, up, down relationship with food, or you're in and out of diets all the time, or you're constantly thinking about and stressing about food, or maybe your body is just a source of discomfort or shame, or stress or obsession, this is for you. And if you have a self-image that is causing you to think and act and feel and behave like there's something wrong with you, or like you're a self-sabotager, or maybe you have fat goggles, as I call them for myself, this is absolutely for you. So definitely tune in to, we're going to go through the first chapter, and we've got 8 chapters that we're going to be walking you through over the next week or so. So again, StresslessEatingBook.com, I'm giving it away for free, and StresslessEatingScore.com to access the scorecard and see where you kind of weigh in on the 8 power mindsets. And we're going to be talking about this chapter by chapter. So today is going to be a little bit longer than the other days, only because I want to kind of share with you a little bit of the why behind the what. Last week's episode of the podcast, we had Kevin come on, who's been on our podcast before, and he kind of turned the tables and kind of shared a little bit of what created the why behind the what of the Stressless Eating Podcast. And so if you are new to this space, if you're new to being influenced by me, part of it is Stressless Eating was born because it's exactly what I needed. About 15 years ago, I lost close to 100 pounds, but I gave myself disordered eating and a really, dysmorphic relationship with my body to get there. Really felt like a sugar addict. Like I had these horrible dependencies on food and sugar, but I was out dieting it and trying to out-exercise it. And a number of things happened, including major spine surgery. I now call it the cost of skinny, because had I known then what I know now, I could have absolutely avoided it. Not to mention, when I talked about my fat head and my skinny head, it really was like, even after I lost the weight, I didn't feel beautiful, powerful, confident, all the things that the magazines told me that I would. And so it wasn't until I realized, like, wow, something inside of me never shifted. Not to mention, I was handcuffed to dieting and exercising if I wanted to keep the weight off. I was in my own mental, emotional, spiritual prison that I didn't know how to get out of. And the diet and health industry, again, everybody's just doing the best they can with what they've got, but they were just throwing more and more diet and exercise programs at my emotional struggles. And I found that the same kind of self-sabotaging behaviors and the same strategy, AKA dieting, that was failing me was failing my clients, was failing everyone that I really knew that was struggling just like I was. And so that is really one of the main inspirations behind Stressless Eating. Is I want it to be a pattern interrupt, because I guarantee you, if you're here right now, if you're listening to this, it's because you don't want to be dieting the rest of your life, right? It's because you want freedom. You want to feel powerful. You don't want to feel like food controls you more than you control it, right? And so part of that is like, if we ever want to feel that way and we ever want to just, be free from it so we can go spend our time, our energy, our heart and soul on the things that we really want to spend it on, we have to do the work to get there. And the cool thing about it is it's an investment on the short term. Like you learn this new language, this new paradigm, which I'm going to be walking you through chapter by chapter, this new paradigm I speak of. You learn it one time and then you have it forever. But it's a language that gets easier the more you practice it. And you get better at it the more that you practice it, so that you can practice it less and less and it just becomes who you are, right? Versus dieting, it gets harder the more we practice it. And let's be honest, we get worse at it the more we practice it, and it never really becomes who we are, right? So it's always got to be this front of mind thing. We're always spending, there's so much mental real estate that's taking over our brains, and it's just no way to live. And so part of it, it's like, what if right now, you could start your healing journey now and just be done with it and get off the roller coaster, ditch the stress, the emotion, the obsession, the second guessing of yourself, and really heal your relationship with food. But it's so much more than that. Healing your relationship with your body, healing your relationship with yourself. Because as we're going to talk about and as you're going to discover, so many of us are walking around and we're not emotionally available to ourselves, or we're living in this world of shame and blame and guilt and comparisonitis and perfectionism. And with perfectionism, it's never enough. You're never skinny enough, pretty enough, rich enough, whatever enough. It's never enough, right? And so we're living in that self-image and that identity. And we wonder, like, why am I miserable? Or why do I have this amazing life, but I feel like I'm kind of dying on the inside? Or, why do I feel like everybody thinks I'm so happy, but inside I'm not? And I'm experiencing depression and anxiety, or cousins of those emotions, right? Let alone our relationship with food, our relationship with our body. And then there's the other camp of like, why then when I lose the weight, why don't I feel confident, right? Well, if the self-image and body image that you've been seeing yourself through every single day for those years while you were living in that body or losing the weight hasn't transformed, you will always end up in alignment with your self-image. And so if your self-image is projecting a picture, shame, blame, comparisonitis, if your self-image is projecting an image of fat, right? And fat is not a feeling, but a lot of times it's become a feeling. Like, I feel fat. You hear that said a lot, right? But that just shows that it's become an identity. It's become part of your self-image. And these are the things that you cannot diet away, right? You cannot out-motivate. You can't outsmart your self-image, right? But also on a strategy side, so that's a self-image side, right? On the strategy side, like, if you're constantly weighing, measuring, counting, tracking, restricting, controlling all that, and it hasn't worked before, right? Or it hasn't worked in the long run, because that's really the key here. Everybody can get results in the short run, but what happens 30 days off, 60 days out, a year after you stopped counting points or tracking carbs or whatever it is, where are you? Right? Is it sustainable? And are you off of that constantly thinking about it roller coaster as well? Right? So it's got to be both the strategy side of it, where you can just be free and live, right? And then the self-image side of it, where you can be free of the voices in your head and live, right? And one distinction you're going to hear me say a lot of women say to me, like, Leanne, like, I don't even know what it looks like to stop dieting, right? That sounds so scary, right? And they think, like, if I just start listening, because intuitive eating is is a big thing nowadays, and it has its place and there's a lot of value out of it. But again, it's like if my intuition when I'm not dieting, tracking, counting, weighing, measuring is to go overeat, binge, overindulge, emotionally eat, comfort eat, numb out, whatever it is, right? I can't listen to my intuition. My intuition is going to cause me to gain a bunch of weight, go off the deep end and freak out, right? And so part of it is like, that's not what I'm saying either, right? So when I say, a new strategy, what I mean is like, if dieting right now is your sense of certainty, even though it doesn't really feel certain, because the more you try to control it, the less in control you feel, or the more out of control you feel, right? But if dieting and controlling is your current version of certainty right now, what I'm inviting you into is like, yes, let's take away that form of certainty, but not without replacing it with another form of certainty, right? That's what makes us think like, hey, we're going to go off the deep end and binge, right? What I'm saying is take away your current level of certainty, because it's not certainty. And if you're just listening to this, you see me putting up you can't see me putting up air quotes, but I am, but replace it with a new level of certainty, a new structure, a new language, a new paradigm. And that's exactly what I designed this book to do, is to just give you that paradigm, give you that new language, give you that new system of thinking. So just wanted to share that. And we're going to go ahead and dive on in. So the first chapter that we're going to look at is chapter 1. And if you are following along, it's in the hard copy book or in the digital version that you can get at stresslesseatingbook.com. It's on page 10. And it is called weight number 1, which is the weight of restriction, deprivation, and punishment. Really. So, part of it is, and you're going to hear me talk about this throughout the book, you hear me talking about it on the podcast a lot already too, is that the weight on your body isn't the real weight, right? The weight on your body is just the weight on your body. The real weight is all this other stuff that you've been carrying around with you that feels heavy. It's burdensome, right? And we're going to talk about, there's 4 weights in total, but we're just talking about the first weight, right? But this is the part that's really heavy. This is the part that's weighing you down. So the first weight of the weight that we're talking about is the weight of restriction, deprivation, punishing yourself, persuading yourself to do the things that you don't want to do, or eat the things that you don't want to eat, or not eat the things that you do want to eat, right? It's constantly living in that like fight mentality where you're having to fight or resist or persuade or control, right? And so first of all, this is the heavy part. It is exhausting. It's taxing. And we're going to talk about too, the fact like the reality is it doesn't even work long term. Because if it was, we wouldn't be here talking about this right now, right? Everyone would be at their health goals. Everybody would be super happy and healthy, right? So bottom line, it doesn't work, right? But, part of it is this is the part that's actually, perpetuating the struggle and keeping you from reaching your goals. And this is where in the book, I talk about the tale of 2 cookies, right? And so here's the reality. First of all, I'll just preface it by saying this, your circumstances or what you're eating are not the problem. It's our thoughts about our circumstances that are the problem. It's your thoughts about food or what you're eating that are the problem. And here's what I mean. So the tale of 2 cookies. If I eat a cookie and I am experiencing guilt because I think like I'm doing something wrong, or I'm experiencing shame because I think there's something wrong with me, like I'm personally like weak-willed or a self-sabotager, right? Or I'm experiencing comparison of like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be eating this compared to what I think is healthy, or like normal people don't eat cookies like I do, or whatever it is, or perfectionism of like, oh my gosh, I ate this cookie, so now I've messed everything up and I'm off the deep end, right? Might as well like say screw it and start tomorrow, right? I'm going to be in the sympathetic branch of my nervous system. It's like the stressed branch of my nervous system, the fight or flight branch. And what happens in that branch is your metabolism essentially shuts down, right? So your gastrointestinal system shuts down. It's not metabolizing and optimally metabolizing nutrients. You're not able to stream and vessel those nutrients to the targeted cell as optimally. It doesn't like totally shut down, but it just like decreases optimization of everything and utilization of the nutrients. Your respiratory system, your breath starts becoming shallow shallow and not optimized. And again, it's not always obvious, right? Your nervous system, especially if you're in this stress branch of your nervous system all the time because of stresses on your daily life, which we'll talk about in another chapter, but also the stress of your mental, emotional self, which we'll also talk about in another chapter. Physically, mentally, emotionally, your brain can't tell the difference between a real and an imagined experience. And so if you are experiencing any stress or dis-ease around food, you are by default going to be in that stress branch of your nervous system. So the nervous system is really the queen of all of the systems in your body. So we already talked about like metabolic system, gastrointestinal system, respiratory system, cardiovascular system, musculoskeletal system being really contracted and stressed, right? Your endocrine system, your adrenals, all of them are essentially going to, for lack of a better way of saying it, I'm oversimplifying it, shut down and not be optimal for health, right? But also fat loss, right? Which is what you really are dieting for in the first place, right? So the other side of it is that every time you practice stress or dis-ease around food or unease around food, you are going to be practicing one more repetition of that stress and dis-ease. And the nervous system gets really good at whatever it practices. And also it's laying down what's called these negative neuro associations alongside food, right? And so again, now it's just rinsing and repeating this kind of like downward spiral, right? On the flip side, that's just from one version of the cookie, right? But on the flip side, same cookie, right? If I'm experiencing pleasure because I'm like, wow, this cookie is delicious. And I'm experiencing just peace because I'm like, you know what, Leanne, just have it. It's a cookie. It's neutral. It doesn't it's not good, bad, right, or wrong, right? I'm also experiencing peace because I know I'm in control and I'm having one, not binging and having 12, right? Anytime I'm experiencing just kind of like a chilled out experience of this cookie because of my thoughts about the cookie, I'm going to be in the parasympathetic branch of my nervous system, which is the relaxed branch of my nervous system. It's the rest and digest branch of my nervous system. It is where magic happens on a health level, right? Which is beyond the scope of this episode. But like, honestly, all of the healing and repair and just amazing awesomeness that happens that the body has the ability to do on a healing side of it. But also, I'm going to talk about that cascade of cascades or the system of systems that's dictated by our nervous system, right? So if I'm in that parasympathetic branch of my nervous system, my metabolism is going to be firing optimally. So gastrointestinal system, but also cardiovascular system, musculoskeletal system, adrenal. So we talked about the hormones and that side of things, the endocrine system. What I didn't mention is when you're in that sympathetic branch, the stress branch that we talked about a minute ago, you're going to be creating and secreting things like adrenaline, cortisol, epinephrine, all those things that are like, they call them the fat storage hormones in the industry, right? But those are going to be, again, not very conducive to your health versus when you're in the parasympathetic nervous system, that relaxed branch of your nervous system, you are going to be creating the hormones of like serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, right? So every cascade, musculoskeletal, relax, like everything is going to be in a relaxed state. So it's really creating this amazing, so hello, like healthy metabolism, even when you're eating the same thing as you were when you were in a stressed like mindset around food. It literally changes the way you optimize and digest food. And that's why you might have a friend that that you're like, wow, she kind of seemingly eats whatever she wants and never gains weight. Well, it's because a lot of this it's the weight of the weight that person's not carrying around, and you don't have to carry around either, right? So back to this second tail of the cookie, right? When I'm in that stress branch of the nervous system, I'm creating those negative neuroassociations, right? So with the good experience of the cookie, the positive experience, I'm creating positive neuroassociations. In this experience, I'm creating negative neuroassociations. Sorry, I flip-flopped them. We're talking about the parasympathetic, the relaxed branch. But in the relaxed branch of your nervous system, with those positive neuroassociations, the nervous system gets good at whatever it practices. So it gets good at laying down positive neuroassociations. It gets good at practicing ease and acceptance and peace around food. And again, we get good at whatever we practice, right? So same cookie, right? Just two very different experiences of that same cookie are going to completely transform the health of you and your ability to lose weight, all that. Not to mention, just think about your inner environment, like peace, what's going on in your mind, your brain, your head, your heart, right? And so again, these are skills we have to learn. Like a lot of women might be hearing this and being like, Leanne, I've never had relaxation, ease, and peace around food. And that's why we have to learn this new language, this new paradigm. But before we do that, we have to figure out what's keeping us from that. And that's why we're going through the weight of the weight, which is the restriction, the deprivation, the punishment, the persuasion that's causing us to live in that stress branch of our nervous system. So that's one side of it, right? And here's the thing, that stress is not benign. Right? We might not be able to see it because it's invisible. It's all happening like underneath or within, right? But I'm telling you, it is not benign. And it's not just what's happening with food either, right? Your thoughts, right, before, during, and after any activity or about any subject matter are what's causing the reaction on your internal environment, right? So we looked at the tale of two cookies. The same is true of the tale of two bodies, right? If you are constantly stressing out and shaming your body, if you're constantly feeling uncomfortable in your skin, if you're constantly feeling pain, like physiological pain, right? You are by default going to be in that stress branch of your nervous system. Versus if you're feeling ease and comfortable in your own skin and your body's feeling healthy and mobile and agile and pain-free, you are going to be in that parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. And that cascade of cascades is going to continue to take place. Same thing with the tale of two breaths. Like how stressed are you on a day-to-day basis? Are you reacting or are you calmly responding? Again, that's going to dictate which branch of your nervous system that you're in, right? And then the tale of two hearts, right? Your head, your heart, your emotions. When you are feeling shame and stress and annoyance at yourself or anxiety or fear or worry or comparisonitis or any of those things, yes, you might not be able to see it, but you are in that stress branch of your nervous system. On the flip side, if you are feeling just we're not even going to move to like positive, I love my body, because that's another subject for another time. That's too much of a jump to your self-image. But what if you just felt acceptance, right? Even like you don't even have to like the weight that you're at right now, but what if you just accepted the weight that you're at right now so that you could move forward, right? Again, that is going to put you in that relaxed branch of your nervous system. And that cascade of emotions or cascade of cascades within the system of systems in your body is going to take root, right? So moral of this story, it's not the food that's the problem. It's your thoughts about the food that are the problem, but that's also the solution. It's not your body that's the problem. It's your thoughts about your body that are the problem, but they're also the solution. It's actually not your circumstances at all. It's your thoughts about your circumstances that dictate whether you're moving towards your solution or if you're ingraining more of the problem. And it really is that black or white, right? It's happening either way, whether you're aware of it or not. And that's why we're just creating heightened awareness with this episode right now. Right? So weight number one, the weight of restriction, deprivation, punishment, persuasion that's causing you to live on that up, down, in, out roller coaster, right? That is the weight of the weight, and it is not benign. But here's the other thing, right? It doesn't even work, right? It causes us to like think about, stress about, obsess about even more, right? So here's the thing, just for a minute, don't think about the color blue. Right? Don't think about a blue sky. Don't think about a blue balloon. Don't think about a paintbrush with some blue paint on it. Don't think about blue, right? How did that work for you, right? Because honestly, our brains are designed to look for more of what we are focusing on, right? And so if I tell you not to focus on blue, your brain has no choice but to focus on blue versus focus on the color red. Focus on a red paintbrush, focus on a red fire truck, focus on a red apple. Not once by default are you thinking about the color blue because you're not focusing on red. And that's the thing. Any woman that I've met that struggles with food and her body, she is so sick of thinking about food, right? And all of these diets, the restriction, the persuasion, the punishment, the control, it forces you to think about food even more. Right? And that just makes it worse. It takes up more mental real estate. The solution that will work for you is one that helps you think about food even less, right? Again, just kind of reinforcing this idea that it doesn't even work, okay? And I can prove it. So the brain is a pattern making machine. We are meant to create and react to patterns, right? That's the brain's job, is to actually be able to predict patterns and then respond accordingly to what happens, right? And so if we are meant to get good at things, right? Like we're meant to get good at whatever we practice more of. That's how the brain is supposed to work, right? Well, then why is dieting like the one thing that doesn't get better the more we practice it. Like if I'm learning how to play the ukulele, technically, if the more I practice it, the better I should get at it, right? Same thing with learning a new language, learning Spanish, whatever, right? But dieting is the one thing where we actually get worse at it the more we practice it. Well, why is that? Well, it's because dieting actually works against your brain. It is causing threat. It is causing reactivity. It's causing you to live in that sympathetic branch of the nervous system, and your brain will never get good at it, right? So what is the moral of the story? Again, it is not the weight on your body. It is the weight of punishment, restriction, control, right? Persuading yourself to do the things that you want to do and don't do the things that you don't want to do and all that, right? It is this mental real estate that's causing you to react. That is the problem, right? And, food is not the enemy, right? Food is not the problem. It's our thoughts about food that's causing and perpetuating the problem. Your body is not the problem. It's your thoughts about your body that are causing and perpetuating the problem. And the only way to heal it is to ditch the weight, right? And it will not be ditched through another diet. It will not be ditched through just like positivity and fake it till you make it and motivation, because you cannot out motivate and out mindset the wiring in your brain. Okay. The only way to heal it is to actually heal it. And the only way to heal it is to actually get really real about the fact that it is a problem, but also without any shame. There's so much shame associated with food struggles for women, because we think like, hey, I'm really smart. I'm really successful. Like, why is this the one thing I can't address? Or we think like, hey, I should be able to figure this out on my own. Or we buy into the lie of like, I know what to do. Why can't I get myself to do it? When in reality, it's like, no, you probably learned the same eat less, move more, harder, faster, more mentality that I learned, that even the most like willpower driven, self-driven, controlled, disciplined woman couldn't sustain very long, because it's a losing game, right? And so the truth is that there's so many influences and messages coming at you, and the world is throwing more diets at your emotional and mental and brain wired struggles, right? And so give yourself grace, give yourself permission to just be where you are. There is no shame about it. I learned it too. I was stuck on that roller coaster for decades, but I'm telling you, there is a way out. You don't have to live like this. So that being said, if you are following along with the Stressless Eating Scorecard, you can go to stresslesseatingscore.com. The very first question in there, again, goes with this chapter 1 that we're talking about, and that's going to show you where you kind of weigh in on that power mindset about where are you carrying the weight in your life. So hopefully today gave you some insight and gave you some, knowledge is power. When we have awareness, I call it an awareness, because a lot of women don't even have the ability that they have, that they can become aware of this awareness, right? So because everything I'm talking about, it is an awareness, and a lot of people don't even know that they can become aware. So I call it an awareness, but now hopefully it will invite you into a higher level of thinking and a higher way of being. And I'm just so glad that you were able to tune in. So thank you for being here. We're going to be back tomorrow for chapter 2 of the Stressless Eating Book for the virtual book club, stresslesseatingbook.com, stresslesseatingscore.com to follow on the scorecard. And I will see you on our next episode of the Stressless Eating Podcast live for our virtual book club. Thanks so much. Bye. Thanks for tuning into today's show. If you like what you heard and you're interested in breaking out of your own food, body, and diet prison, here's what I want you to do next. Head on over to stresslesseating.com. That's stresslesseating.com. And sign up to watch the Stressless Eating webinar, where I'll walk you through the exact 5-step game plan my female clients use to conquer emotional eating, self-sabotage, and finally heal themselves from the restrictive all-or-nothing diet mentality for good. But without obsessing or spending years in therapy to address it. I've laid it all out there for you in 5 easy steps. Remember, healing your relationship with food and your body does not happen by itself. You need expert guidance to make it happen, and we've helped clients all over the world take back their power from the food and find true and lasting freedom while enjoying life and warm chocolate chip cookies along the way. To see if we can help you do the same,
head on over to stresslesseating.com. I'm Leanne Ellington, and I'll see you next time.